Hey folks, I wanted to take us through our third body paragraph of the CAT-W structure. This is going to come after your first two body paragraphs that we've been working with. The opinion paragraph, where you explain your point of view, you're defending your thesis, using a quote from the article that we're reading for that particular CAT-W. Next, you would bring in a personal experience, something that happened to you or someone you know, or something that you've read, something that you've seen, anything that's outside of the CAT-W article. This next paragraph is the counter-argument paragraph. And the goal of a counter-argument is to use the opposite point of view. So you're going to think of what you're trying to argue given whatever topic that we're dealing with. Give the example multitasking, the first CAT-W that we really worked on together. Many of you said, agreeing with the article, that multitasking is a bad idea. We don't get as much done, we don't do it as well. Which is pretty much what the author argues as well. So if that's your argument, and you've written an opinion paragraph defending this argument, and then you've written a second paragraph where you describe some sort of personal experience, the third step would be the counter-argument. So since you're arguing that multitasking is a bad idea, you at least want to think about what's the other side of this argument. You know, there are people out there who believe that multitasking is a good idea. So we're still going to argue that it's a bad idea, but what we're going to do is we're going to explain the other point of view. So those who believe it's a good idea, this is what they believe, but then I'm going to explain why they're mistaken, or why I believe they're wrong. And so let's walk through this. That's the basic idea of a counter-argument. You're summarizing the opposite point of view, and then you're explaining why you disagree. One reason you want to do this is you want to show that you understand the other person's argument, or the other side, their argument. But you think it's incomplete, or flawed, or incorrect. And that's better than saying that it's just wrong. Wrong in what way? Wrong why? You want to be as specific as possible when you're arguing something. So, as we know, in a CAT-W or in general, to show that you understand something, to show that you understand the opposite argument, you're going to summarize it briefly. And then you're going to explain why it's wrong, in your view. So, those are really the two big steps in this strategy. And to illustrate that, I'll walk you through an example. Let's say we're having an informal class discussion or a class debate on what's better, McDonald's or Chipotle. So, the argument for McDonald's might go something like this. I can always find a McDonald's when I'm craving it. I can go to McDonald's with a few dollars and walk out with a whole meal. There's a lot of variety. Most of the options are pretty cheap. My food is ready quickly. And what's more, it's tasty. It's known for its flavor. That's why they have so many customers. When people go to McDonald's, they know what they're getting. It's a product they know they'll enjoy. Because of its variety and value, McDonald's truly is the best option here. Okay. So we're imagining that this is the other side's argument. This is what they're arguing. So the first step in the counter-argument would be to summarize that. And it is truly a summary, meaning we're not going to take every single detail here. We have to boil it down in terms of what do we really want to say? What do we really want to argue against? Because remember, what you summarize in this first part is going to be, in the second part, what you're arguing against. So similar to how we write a summary for our introduction for the CAT-W, you're going to pick what you believe is the main idea and two other main supporting details in their argument. So that might look something like this. My classmate clearly believes that McDonald's is the superior choice for several reasons. Classic topic sentence. What they believe, and then there are several reasons coming. Their first main point is about convenience. The restaurant has franchises everywhere, each offering a great many menu items that can be ordered and eaten within minutes. So, convenience, variety, and quickness. My classmate also argues in favor of low prices and claims the food tastes good. Okay, so we encapsulated most of that argument in a couple sentences here. We didn't summarize every last detail, but we did catch the main things, and we did focus on a couple things that we're going to now argue against. The next step is to explain point by point why you disagree. And that's one reason it's important to be clear in your summary, because you want to go point by point, step by step, explaining this is what they said, but this is why I disagree. And that's how you're going to use their argument to boost yours. So, I see where my classmate is coming from, however I disagree entirely. First, just because there's a McDonald's in every corner doesn't mean they necessarily have excellent food. It's true that they have a lot of cheap options on their menu, but if you really pay attention, they're really the same three items sold in different forms. So I'm arguing against this idea of convenience as a really great thing and a reason why we should all go to McDonald's. So the other side believes that one of the reasons McDonald's is great is because they're convenient. And I can't argue that they're not convenient. They are. But what I can argue is that that's not necessarily the best thing or the most important thing. And the second thing I'm going to argue is that the variety on their menu is not truly variety because they're basically taking the same three things and selling them in different forms. Secondly, if you want a real quality meal, sometimes you have to sacrifice variety. A lot of the best restaurants only have a few things on their menu. Just look at Chipotle. Additionally, Chipotle is just as quick as McDonald's, and while they may not have quite as many locations, they still have quite a few. Lastly, if you really want a good meal, sometimes you have to pay a couple dollars more. If you stray from the value menu at McDonald's, you can easily end up spending $10 on a premium sandwich meal. You'll spend a couple more dollars at Chipotle, but the ingredients are fresher and healthier. So, if you'll notice, I went through point by point on what they argued, and then I explained why I believe that's mistaken or misleading. They said that they've got a lot of variety, they've got a lot of options, but I'm saying it's misleading. They don't really have that many options. And variety, if you want quality food, sometimes you're not really looking for variety. You're looking for a place that does a few things and that does it well. So again, I can't argue that McDonald's doesn't have variety, but I'm going to argue that that's not the most important thing. And then I'm going to say that it's not the end of the world if you're paying a couple dollars more. And basically, I'm going to do my best to explain why having a meal that's, that's easy to get to, that's cheap, in my view here, isn't the greatest. So, those are the two parts of the counter-argument. So if you put them together, the paragraph is going to look something like this. Now, up here you see the summary. And you notice that it's short. It's only 3 sentences. And that's because we really want to get to the main part of the counter argument, which is where you take these 3 reasons or these 3 things that the other side is arguing and then go step by step and saying, I disagree with this part because X. I disagree with this part because Y. I disagree with that part because Z. And so while you are explaining what the other side believes, you are explaining it so that you can take it down. And that's what we're doing here. And I just went through this argument, so I won't go through it again. And so what follows here, obviously we're not really going to be writing about McDonald's versus Chipotle. That's just an example of a debate that could be had. What this next part is a structure for a counter-argument in general. Some might say that's just a good general starter because it shows that you're not talking about what you believe, you're talking about what those people over there might believe. Some might say that McDonald's is the best restaurant in the world. So that's going to be where your main idea goes. The main thing that that side is arguing. They might believe something. They might also argue. So those are where you're going to encapsulate those two supporting details on the other side. So again, you're choosing three things that you want to argue against. And then this part's important. However, I disagree because that's kind of the turning point in this paragraph. That's when you're focusing back on, okay, now this is what I want to argue. Firstly, secondly, lastly. You don't have to use that exact structure, those exact sentence starters, but that is a way to keep yourself honest about which point were they making, and then which way am I going to argue against it. You really want to make sure that you are going point by point so that you don't get off track and so that your argument is coherent and that it makes as much sense as possible. So if you do those two things, if you summarize the other side's argument, so that's going to be, if you're looking at your thesis, the opposite opinion of that thesis. And then you're going to go step by step why you disagree. And so we can talk about, most of the time your body paragraph is going to include some sort of a quote. And where the quote goes is going to depend on what your opinion is versus what the author's opinion is. For example, again, we'll go back to the multitasking example. If you're arguing with the author, then the opposite point of view is not going to be the author's point of view because you're on the author's side. The opposite point of view is truly going to be what some people over there might believe. And so what some people over there might believe is what your summary is going to be. And then when you get down here, when you get to why you disagree, one of these, firstly, secondly, or lastly, one of these can be a quote from the article because the author is in your corner. They believe what you believe. But say that you were arguing against the author. Say that your thesis was, in this world we have to multitask. We don't have the luxury of doing everything one at a time. So in that case, your quotation would go up here where you're explaining the opposite side's point of view. Because the author is now included in that opposite side that you're arguing against. And so I would put the quote in that case in under they might believe or they might also argue. And then down here is going to be your own reasoning. And a brief note about why a counter-argument. The main goal of a counter-argument is to show, again, that you're looking at an issue from multiple points of view. And that shows a critical response. And that's really what a lot of academic coursework is in college and in academic learning. you want to show that you're not only looking at something with a narrow view, but you're at least thinking about what does the other side